Episode number 20, William Schmuck.
All right, cut to edge of stage. Great. All right, color frost.
Check. 1, 2, 3. Check.
Stand by, please. Heads to half, heads out, letting cues 1 through 10, sound cues 1 through 10.
And welcome back to The Title Block, a podcast about Canadian theatre designers, their history, and their craft. And I'm your host, Michael Cruz. And this week I'm speaking to William Schmuck, who's the head of design down at the Shaw Festival. First, I wanted to remind you that the Patreon account is still up. It's true. A few of you have actually decided to support the podcast. I appreciate that. You're receiving this probably at the beginning of September. You're downloading this on iTunes or your favorite podcatcher software. Of course, people who had signed up for the Patreon account to support the Title Block podcast have received this a week and a half or so early. So there's a little perk. So please, while you have a chance, while you're listening to this, just go to patreon.com/the Title Block podcast, all one word, and click on one of those little buttons so I can continue to get these out. And if I get enough people signed up, that's about 20 or 30 of you, then I'll start putting out episodes out twice a month. And just like this month, if you do support us, you'll be getting episodes a bit earlier than everybody else. And they'll also be ad-free, more or less. I mean, I don't have any ads, but I won't be stopping to bug you in the middle of the podcast like I will do, yes, in this one, just to remind you to go click on that button. So there's that. And thank you for those who have already jumped on the bandwagon and chosen to support the Title Block podcast. I really appreciate your support. Let me just digress here just for 1 second and give you some thoughts on somebody we've lost in the theater community this month here in August 2015. Just a few days ago, right now I'm recording this on the 27th of August, we lost a dear man in the industry named Kevin Ryan. Kevin was a technical director at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa. I worked with him down at the Blythe Festival earlier in my career in the 90s when he was the production manager down there. We will miss him dearly. He died of a tragic illness and quite young. He was only 44. Leaves his wife, Amanda Baumgardner, and 2 beautiful children behind him. We're all quite sad. It was a very touching memorial, and I just wanted to remember him here on the podcast. Thank you for indulging me for that. He was a great man. Kevin was always ready with a smile, no matter what problem you brought to him, and was always ready to tackle it with aplomb, and found solutions far ahead of your own distress when you're working with him as a tech. So here's just us remembering Kevin Ryan, TD, at the National Arts Centre. And so now I turn to my interview with Mr. William Schmuck. We spoke in his office in May of 2015 this year at the Shaw Festival. He grew up in Kitchener, where I'm from, and he trained at the National Theatre School in the late 70s, so that's his sort of pedigree. We have a great conversation about the show he designed here at Shaw this year, one of the shows he designed at Shaw, his general philosophy, and of course his some of his own personal history. These episodes were a bit shorter. They weren't the sort of full 2 hours, sort of full-throated or deep dive into somebody's life. We had a bit of less time, but I think it's still interesting, and we get a lot covered anyway. So remember to check the show notes for any kind of links to theater history and some background on stuff we sort of gloss over. You can find that at thetitleBlock.com under the episodes tab. And that's it. So here is my interview with William Schmuck. And remember, if you like the show, go to patreon.com/thetitleBlock podcast. Thank you. Bill Schmuck, welcome to the Title Block. And thank you very much for joining me here at the Shaw Festival.
In my office.
In your office. Joining me in your office.
That's right.
It's very convenient. So let's start off the conversation with a little bit of context. Where did you grow up, first of all?
Kitchener-Waterloo.
My hometown. We share. I think we went to the same high school together.
St.
Not
Jerome's?
together, but yes.
Yes.
I went to St. Jerome's.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's right. That's right.
That's a long time ago. When did you first decide that you were going to go into theater? Like, what made that choice? Did you have any kind of event, or did it just sneak up on you?
For me, I knew it very, very, very young. I mean, as much as you can know that, but Stratford not being far away and living in Kitchener-Waterloo, I'd always loved art and I always loved theater. And I just thought, boy, if there could be a job that was right in the middle of those two, that's what I'd want to do. Right. So fairly early on, that's kind of how I sort of charted everything and tried to make that happen. And I didn't realize that that's not usual for people, that sometimes people have to really find what it is they want to do, but it always just seems so obvious to me. So I didn't know exactly between theater and art where I would be, but design seemed to be the thing that required that you draw, that you were visually expressing yourself visually. So that's that seemed a natural fit.
Great. And did you have any mentors at the time to help you make that decision, or did you just go off and...
Not mentors at that age, I wouldn't say. I mean, I had great teachers, and I was in amateur theater. Alan Lund from Charlottetown Festival directed some productions at the KW Musical Productions, and I was in those. And I always knew I didn't want to be an actor. I mean, I enjoyed performing and I enjoyed all of that, but that didn't seem to... I was more distracted by, why are they wearing those things? If this was up on a level, it would work so much better. So I was always outside of it, even though I enjoyed participating in it. The other thing I was always done with it by the time it opened. I loved the rehearsal process, but wasn't so crazy about, the 3 weeks of performing something. So it just seemed to be, the apotheosis seemed to be the opening, and then that was done for me. So I kind of knew that acting wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah. What was your next step then? Did you go to theater school or to art school, or? I
went to University of Waterloo, and I took art and English and history and art history courses and all of that. But I wasn't satisfied that it was focused enough into the area that I wanted. Growing up in the 60s, to get a classical education was hard because everything was exploring other ways. The establishment was not what we were embracing at that point. So all the art courses and things were often taught by professors who were doing their own work, and it wasn't really based on any kind of classical structure. And in order to draw well, in order to understand art history and all of that, it requires a kind of rigor and and I was hungry for that. Even though I was interested in all those other things, I was hungry for that. So I started looking around at other schools, and the National Theatre School was somewhere I'd heard of before. And I thought, oh well, they only take so few students a year that maybe I'll try to get in and finish my degree later, or I'll be working on my degree until I get in. But I was fortunate enough to get in, so that kind of changed plans a bit. So I got in, and it was great. I mean, it's funny, I've told this story so many times, but I was the only Anglophone in my class. Usually at NTS they take equal numbers of English and French students. But when I went, it was during the referendum in the, 78. I was there from 78. I was there during the golden time of 78 to 81, the Nancy Polk, Joe Ziegler, Shawn McKenna, Colm Fior, Christina Padubiak, So, but, in my year, I was the only Anglophone. So it was scary, terrifying, and hard, but really wonderful because you were exposed to something so you were immersed in a whole other culture. Even though many of my colleagues, the students in my class spoke French, it still was a French class, So I gained a lot from that experience.
And what about the experience of coming from Kitchener with the Stratford model as your sort of base? Did you see a lot of theater in Toronto, or was there a lot of touring stuff that came through that gave you an idea of what Canadian theater was happening?
I don't think I had much of a sense of Canadian theater as a entity. I'd seen a few things at Stratford from school, and I was very aware of it being there because even if you weren't seeing things, you were aware of what they were doing, and it was always in the paper, and so you could and there were lots of ways to research it and find out what it was, and so it had a real presence in my mind, but I didn't have a real sense of what Canadian theater was at that time. But you get there very quickly once you go to theater school, even though it wasn't very English, the connections that I was making, but I knew that there was a career out there somewhere else, than necessarily Montreal, but there might be something in Montreal too.
And so what happened when you, did you actually finish your degree at Waterloo, or did you just go to theater school? And
No, I just went to, I never looked back.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so when you got out of theater school, what was your first opportunity? Like, did you start working as a tech or a craftsperson, or did you start designing right away?
I was incredibly lucky when I graduated. After the year I graduated, I had some friends that were actors that were working at Stratford, and I met Clayton Shields, who was the wig master at that time, and he was very good friends with a designer in London, Ontario, at the Grand called Jack King. And they were looking for a scenic artist at the time for the Grand Theatre. And I had always loved painting, and I, had developed that as a child and took lots of classes and, did all that. So while I didn't know all that much about scenic painting, except from what I'd learned at theater school, from the hands-on practical part of doing the shows, he really encouraged me to get in touch with Jack and go in for an interview and show my portfolio and blah, blah, blah. So I did. And I was very lucky to get the job as the scenic artist at the Grand. And there were some design opportunities as part of that. He was very aware that that's really what I wanted to do. And so I got costumes on one of the main stages and productions and some studio shows. So it was terrific. I mean, I couldn't have had a better launch, out of theater school than that. And Jack and his partner Ed Cotanen, who were both there in London, I think of as mentors. I think also of Francois Rabot, at NTS as a mentor, and Jack and Ed very much so. Talking, giving me the tools to solve my own problems and create my own way of doing things. But they were also very good painters and very based on a strong scenic from a strong scenic experience. So, it was a really good fit for me. And Francois Barbeau, not a set designer in his own right necessarily, but much more a costume designer and so generous to me when I was at theater school there, just giving me opportunities and, he's such a talented man, really.
Yeah. I spoke with Ed in January. We had a nice conversation for the title block, and we didn't talk about Jack King a lot because we had a lot of stuff to talk about. What were your reminiscences? Because I know that Jack King died in the late '80s, right? What was he like, and as a person and as a designer? And
he was hilarious. I mean, he was very, very funny, very smart. Not educated in a big formal way. He was from Chatham, I think, Ontario, but definitely had was part of the Stratford Festival in the early days, and was Leslie Hurry's assistant, and definitely you could see the influence of Leslie Hurry's style on Jack, and Jack had a very strong design sense and a lot of confidence, and he knew what he wanted to do with plays when he was working on them. That he was driven from a deep sense of what he wanted to express, and I always admired that. I guess I graduated in 81, so I was at the Grand at 82. So, I didn't know. It's interesting you say that now, and I think of him as such a giant in my life, but I didn't know him that long when I really think about it. Yeah. I still know Ed to this day, but that is interesting. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think one of the things I really like to cover on the title block is the history of Canadian theatre, and there's so many people that we've lost. Especially, it's funny in the era of the internet, where I can just search for Bill Schmuck, and and I can go on in my library at U of T and check the newspaper list, and I can find out everything I want to know about you. That's at least in print,
Right.
but quite a bit.
Right.
People who we lost prior to 1995 really don't have an existence.
Right.
I mean, they exist in newspapers in some respects, but nobody's writing about them or writing about their histories, and so we're really losing them. So thank you for that. For remembering us.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Okay, so you started at the Grand, and how long were you there for? 1 or 2 seasons? You said
One season, and then another fortunate thing happened. There was a restaurant in London, Ontario called the Latin Quarter. I don't know if you know of it. It was it was an old style sort of 50s, 60s theme restaurant, kind of a New Orleans-y courtyard feel. It was owned by a band leader, Johnny Downs, and there was always just an edge of showbiz about the place. And he wanted to refresh his restaurant, and he was pretty committed to the theme idea that he had, but he wanted to sort of bring it a little bit more up to date. So I was given the gig to do it, and it was a good fit because I could paint it and sculpt it, and because it was a theatrical solution that he was looking for the interior. So I did that for a few months, and gave me enough money to go to Europe, and I went to Europe for a while and did the grand tour, and it was wonderful. And then right after that, when I came back, I believe I had done. I had really now done a season of scene painting at the Grand, so I knew now what I didn't know, right? So I got a grant to go to the National Ballet and learn scene painting from George Schloegle, who was a very gifted scenic artist with the ballet. He trained there. He trained at the ballet in Germany, but had been that all his entire life from childhood onwards. So he was a real master. They were working on a new ballet of Eugene Onegin at the time. So I went and I apprenticed on that, and they kept me there. And I did, I think, about 4 years off and on there, developing, my skills. And I love the ballet. I love opera. I love the big canvas of that kind of presentation. And I really learned a tremendous amount, solidifying what I'd learned in theater school and what I had learned at the Grand, but, giving me even that much more. So I was quite confident by the time I finished that I had that, and I was starting to get a lot of work teaching universities, doing their productions, a little bit of regional theater, and things started to move forward, from that.
And just giving it the context of those experiences in today, do you think that people have the opportunity to do the same type of training? Like, it seems like, and Christina had mentioned this as well, that we're losing certain disciplines to, part of its lack of budget. Like, very few people can commission a large drop or a trompe-l'oeil pros or something, right? So do you think that those skills are being lost, or do we have, Shaw seems like to be a repository, and Stratford seems to be a repository, maybe the Ballet, National Ballet, are the last kind of places where those skills are still being maintained. Are there opportunity for new people to learn those skills these days still, or is it something that's pretty exclusive?
I think if you want to learn scene painting, there are opportunities to find it. Certainly there's less of it happening. But where it is happening, the people are, I don't want to say they're more experienced, but it's very solid. They're not to say that when I was just starting out, there wasn't that, but there were more people that were doing it that weren't as good as you know what I mean? Right. So, because there was more of it, it never got to do you know what I mean? Like, when there's more of something, sometimes the expertise is not there in the same way because people take it a little bit for granted. Yeah. Whereas now there's so little of it, and it doesn't seem to be in style in the same way. So if you're going to do a drop, it better be spectacular, Opera Atelier, I didn't get to mention my connection there, but Opera Atelier still does all of that magnificent scene painting. And after leaving the ballet and, starting my design career, I started to work at the Opera Atelier in Toronto, a small Baroque opera company. And I had all the goods that they needed to do that stuff. So it was a good fit for me and a good opportunity. And it was just timing, so I did their first Magic Flute, Don Giovanni, all of those. And, at the... some of them were the not Princess of Wales, the
Winter Garden, or the
the famous the Royal Alex, the Royal Alex. My gosh,
it's okay.
The Royal Alex, also some at the Winter Garden as well. Yes, but they were the kind of work I absolutely wanted to do in those kinds of theaters. Now that isn't to say I didn't have interests of other kinds of theater that are totally opposite all of that, but that was kind of the beginning of my career, what drove me to learn all that stuff. Should I just keep on the trajectory here?
Well, sure. I'd also like to mention that having seen, several of the pieces that you've done here, you can tell those influences from that classical training. Because when you do a period piece, the scale is large, but it's also detailed and like it's from that era.
Right.
We know the material.
Right.
You're not just trying to make it up, right? Which is helpful, I guess, to be when you're doing those plays at such a level. No, that's great. So let's. I want to get to the Shaw. At this point, you're still doing a lot of scenic art, right?
Yes, and started and doing university teaching and like doing shows at universities and that kind of stuff.
When did you sort of start exclusively doing design work and leaving the scenic art work in the past?
Well, I guess around the early 90s or the late 80s, I guess. I also went to the CBC. I didn't mention that for 5 or 6 years. I worked in the wardrobe department there as an assistant designer because I wanted to see if television and film is what I wanted to do. I was curious about all of that. And I realized it wasn't. It was fun to do, but it was too distant. As a stage designer, you get to decide what the audience sees when the curtain goes up. On a film, you supply possibilities for the director of photography and the director to decide, and they can decide fairly late on, or they can change their mind about something. So it just felt a little bit too removed for me. I didn't feel as vital in the process. Now, I'm sure to be an art director on a film, that is satisfying, but that wasn't pulling me the way the stage was. I always loved the immediacy of the stage and the the fact that it's right there in front of you. I just thought that was more interesting.
Now you became the head of design at Shaw in 1996.
Yeah.
So it's only about 15 years after you left National Theatre School or graduated from National Theatre School, right? That seems to be, that seems to be a bit young. Is that odd? So
well, I don't know. It's the theater, so what is what people expect and what is odd.
Yeah, it
was a great. I came here in '93. My first production that I worked on was Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which is a musical, a lot of fun, and I seemed to have a lot of success when I got here, and it just seemed to be somewhere that I wanted to be and somewhere that seemed to want me. So it was a good marriage of my skills and the kind of plays I like to do. So by the time my predecessor, Cameron Porteous, decided to retire, he was doing much more film and television at that time. Christopher Newton asked me if I would be interested, and yes, I would be interested. I think it... I had all the skills to do the job. I think I had the experience of a few seasons under my belt here, knowing how the operation worked. It is an institution. It is a big company, and regardless of what the approach is on any one play, there is an overarching structure that these plays have to fit into, and you want to make sure. Well, what is useful to be or to contribute as head of design is to make sure that that is functioning. Mm-hmm. That, from the point of view of the artists that are doing the work, they can do the work and be effective in what they're trying to do and be successful in what they're trying to do, as opposed to, say, just a production director who is looking at budgets and schedules and the overall flow and, all of those things. So it's, the two jobs are working tandem to do that. So, I don't know. I loved it. I found it very challenging and very interesting, because all of a sudden I was being exposed to all the other side of everything that I always wondered about but never knew. And you can get a bit too much of that at a certain point, but it was very, and still is to this day, very challenging.
And here I am interrupting you in the middle of this interview, which I think is going quite well so far. Just to remind you to go to patreon.com/the Title Block Podcast and give your support to this show. Remember, it does take, about 6 or 8 hours, with travel and the original interview and editing, etc., to get this show up on the website. And I really would love to get more than one episode up a month, but given that time, it's a bit of I do have to give up some other stuff, so I'm looking for your support to give me the incentive, certainly to do that. I'm also planning on some trips out of Toronto. I want to include obviously more designers and interview them in person, which always helps. So I want to get to Vancouver. And next year I wasn't able to go to CITT this year because of that, and I need to get your help to get there as well. So I'll be letting you know about those specific trips as we go through the year. But in the meantime, just give a couple bucks. That's all. That's really all it takes. You can feel free to give more if you really want to become a really big patron of the program. But go to patreon.com/the Title Block Podcast and give us your support. Thank you so much. And now I'll turn you back to my interview with William Schmuck at the Shaw Festival. All right, so having started in 96, you've been here for now 14 years, 15 years almost.
Well, we're 2016, right?
20, oh God. I can't
Or
do math.
2015.
You've been here for almost 20 years. Sam, I was here in 97, so I'm trying to forget the fact that was almost 20 years ago as well.
Yeah. I think we're all trying to do that. Forget the fact that, it's been so long.
It's been a bit while. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been here for this long period of time. How have things changed since when you first got hired to today? I imagine...
the theater. Yeah, the theater in general, it's not only the Shaw Festival, but the theater in general has changed dramatically. Also, the entertainment business, like who the theater competes with now. We've got Netflix. We've got we've always had movies. We've always had touring companies, but there's so many other options for the entertainment dollar than what there used to be. There used to be Stratford and Shaw and the opera and the ballet, and the Mirvishes, the Royal Alex, but there wasn't as much as there is today. And there were, so that has changed. That has changed the focus of the Shaw Festival. That's changed how we're seen, how people, one of the bigger things is how do people produce plays now that is different than they did when I first got here. When I came here, we were still at the time of celebrating the well-made play, being almost slavishly devoted to the intent of the author. I mean, I still think that's pretty important, but I think as time moves on, that doesn't seem to be as important to a lot of young directors. Now I think that's fashion. I think that's just what we're in right now. But there's a sense of always reinventing, which is great because theater does always have to reinvent itself. But I don't know that. I think you have to be careful with that. I think you have to make sure you're doing it better than it was, right? And sometimes I think there's a sense of changing it at all regardless, and I think that's dangerous. But certainly there are lots of plays that the structure is just too clunky, or it became a hit without it being its best version. You know what I mean? Because there wasn't there wasn't as much competition at that time. Plus, I'm thinking specifically of musicals. Musicals stayed for a long period of time in the form that they were. And when we go to do them today, a lot of their structures seem very clunky. So, here at the Shaw specifically, we reinvent them. We try to find a way to honor what it is, but give it a different focus, give it a different, not so much a different structure, but present it in a fresh way that feels modern and vital. And that across the board. I mean, I think theater is doing that. Theater is looking at the work in a different way than it used to. It used to try to be much more in keeping with, not slavishly copying the original production, but the original intent of the production. So that's when you do that, all things change, because you're looking at new technologies, you're looking at different approaches, your audience's expectation. I don't know that they have the same kind of expectation. They don't know what they're going to get from show to show. So all of those things have changed, and a lot of that has come out of technology, has come out of movies and television, that there are ways to move faster through ideas than what the plays had when they were written. So we're always playing with the speed of ideas. We had a forum a few years ago where we talked about that, and we have an ongoing conversation about that all the time. How is a modern audience going to feel, looking at this work from 100 years ago, 150 years ago?
Has that been the root of the change or the expansion of the mandate then, to make sure that you could do stuff that remains relevant, to get people sort of indoctrinated into the tradition of theater, and then you can hit them with a Shaw, which is a traditional, challenging, relevant play, but may not have the same voice as people are used to in other cultural contexts?
Well, Shaw is so smart and so he considered his topic so well, and he, in any one of, you read any one of his plays and he hits you over the head quite a few times with what his message is. Not, and it's not, I don't find it boring. I find it very literate, and they're like really smart arguments. That's what he's doing. He's got a thesis that he's presenting, and it's always social based. It's always about problems in society. And when you start a play from that place, it's going to have a different resonance and trajectory than a play that is just about a plot and characters. He has dressed up his argument with a plot and characters, but the argument is still there, and that's what endures in Shaw. I mean, that's why the plays are so fantastic. Now, a modern audience is not always so ready to sit and listen to a long argument. Now, they are if they know that's what they're getting, but a lot of theater people, audiences come from all over, and they come to the theater for so many different reasons, and that's something we consider too. That we have to make sure we're giving people what they're going to want. But I think sometimes we struggle with Shaw because it is so smart, and it is the style of it is that way. Yet when you're working on them, actors love it. They love the wordplay. They love the skills they have to develop in order to have those long arcing ideas, and to keep them clear and succinct, but also allow their character to develop and express as real people. All of that is just so wonderfully done, and there's so much value in it. And it is always interesting finding ways to update those Shaw plays to make them relevant, not necessarily make them modern, but find a fresh way to tell it. They sit very well, or they lend themselves to that kind of adaptation, as long as you can get the societal surround of what you're doing to be parallel to what the intention of the original was. Right. That is one of the reasons we've expanded the mandate. I think we just, as time changes and everybody's doing our mandate, like if all the other theaters would just not do plays between 1850 and 1950, we'd be fine. We don't do Shakespeare, so
Well, not a lot happened between 1850 and 1950, so there's not a lot of choice.
Yeah,
right?
I guess there. Yeah.
I want to bring this back to design in a second, but I also wanted to ask about you've now survived between two different. Like you were brought in by Christopher Newton.
That's right.
In '96, and worked with him in the early '90s, and transitioned to Jackie Maxwell. How do you find? When I was here, when Chris was here, there was always this quiet competition between Stratford and Shaw. And I enjoyed being here because all of my friends that work at Stratford, not that it wasn't a creative, vibrant, enjoyable place to be, but there was a level of competition at Stratford that at that time that didn't exist here. It seemed like much more of an ensemble, like a family, like we're all in it together at the Shaw Festival.
Competition between the artists?
Between the artists, yeah. Like who's gonna get that role next year, and there seemed to be a bit of, I don't want to gossip too much, but it seemed to be like a competition down there, and it seemed to be like you had to watch out for yourself, otherwise, you might find yourself out
not
the
there anymore.
Not there anymore, right? Now, obviously things change over time, right? Your time waxes and wanes, especially at the festivals. But it seemed like it was focused on the ensemble here. There it was very focused on the product, that seemed to be something that Christopher Newton crafted over a number of years. How have things changed in the 20 years to obviously to remain connected to the audience, and how they managed to maintain that? What's the difference between Jackie Maxwell's approach and Christopher Newton's approach, and how have you weathered that?
That's a good question. They're both very smart people. They both love actually the mandate that the Shaw Festival is. A lot of the things that you were mentioning in the preamble to this is that I think one of the big differences between Stratford and Shaw was that Christopher had been here for 23 years. So when he came into the company in the early 80s, the company already existed, but it's where he took the company from the time he arrived until the time he left, which created a kind of consistency and a kind of sense of ensemble that people stayed here a very long time and developed their skills to a very high level. And that there was an understanding of how plays are done, or how we wanted to do plays, and all of the resources and all of the vision was going to follow what Christopher had set up and where he was going with it. And he took it to as far as I think he was interested in taking it when he retired, and he had achieved, I think, the things that he had really worked to achieve. So that would be a difference between Stratford and Shaw, that Stratford, has artistic directors that changed over every 5 or 6 years and had very different ideas about approaching the work. And the company, there were company members that as the change happened would leave, so there wasn't the same sense of security that Christopher had built with his company here. When Jackie came in, she came in at a very dynamic time, I would say, 9/11, world event, all the world events that were happening really changed how the world was, and she had to weather all that. And she also, when the millennium changed, all of a sudden, plays from 1900 seemed so far ago, where only a couple of years before they didn't seem that far, So it's just funny how time moves on. And it's not that they're any less important or any less interesting, but we look at them differently. And I think Jackie was confronted with that. Plus, I think, Jackie being a woman, that influenced her interests as well, with feminism and trying to... and Shaw being a feminist, it was a good fit, in terms of the work and in terms of the ideas. And that was very interesting to Jackie to develop that and to consider all of that in her choices that she was making. So the company developed and shifted in a different way. Also, new playwriting is something that Jackie wanted to do, where under Christopher I don't think we did any new work. because his focus was elsewhere, you know? So any company over time has to develop in order to stay vital and alive. And I think Jackie took that challenge squarely on and has moved the company forward in those ways. You know, it's funny, these are big questions, you know, that you're asking. So it's hard to come up with a concise bullet point. But, you know, it feels like a much more modern company. It feels like a company that is, well, the Shaw has always taken training of young people very seriously. I think it's training more young directors now. You know, I think as the business changes and as the technologies change, there's more opportunities for people to enter into the Shaw because they have those technologies and those backgrounds. Yeah, that's
a perfectly satisfying answer to me. Now let's bring it back to design. So how have these changes impacted not only the choice of designers, but the individual choices of designers for the shows? Like, you said before that people are doing less painted scenery, for example, and it's more modern, more projection. Certainly this year, I was talking to Beth Cates and Ben Chaisson, and now this is the first year where you've had a number of projection designers, specific projection designers. And the show used to be that the lighting designer or the set designer would collaborate to come up with like where the panties were going to be or whatever. Yeah. Video projection really wasn't a thing. So now you've got, now in several projection designers involved in the process. Is that one? I mean, that's one example of how things have changed. But how else has the approach to design changed in general over the last 20 years here in response to those other changes?
Well, like I had said previously about the slavish kind of attention to the intent of the script and the era of the script, I think we take a little more postmodern approach now. And not across the board, but it's opened up that we can do shows out of a specific period and not necessarily put them in another period, but put them in a fantasy or in a period, a collection of periods that suggest the ideas that you're trying to portray. So there's I think it's an opening up, a freeing of that. We don't do that all the time, but we certainly do it often. Certainly the technologies that you mentioned. I mean, I think back when I was first starting, that was the time of the mega musical, Cats and Phantom and Les Mis and all of those were what were popular. And I think the big spectacle was really what people wanted. I think people still want a big spectacle, but they want to be able to have that spectacle shrink right down into a microcosm, moment, and like a shutter lens, just go right in and sit there, so that the whole production isn't weighed down by all of this other stuff. But they want to be bowled away as well by it. So their expectation for any theater experience is much, broader ranging, and technology allows us to do that. Technology also allows us to show documentary images and documentary information. You can import that into your production, into your presentation. So that's very exciting and very researched in what we would do here. So that it's allowed all of that to happen. And with the technology, the cost of doing that is less. We don't have any more time to tech these things than we've always had, but you can do a lot of dry teching on your computer. You can sort a lot of problems out before you even hit the stage, which is an amazing thing. So, the older techniques, they only could be what they were. A scrim was the exciting thing back then because it was transformative. Now we can be transformative in so many different ways. And I think that's one of the biggest changes in design.
And as far as communicating your design, I was talking to Christina earlier about how Ken McDonald does full computer-generated renderings for his costumes and things on Illustrator. McDonald? McDougall. and
McDonald.
McDonald.
Yeah.
Yeah, McDonald. So many
Of
names in
Morris
my-
Panich and Ken McDonald.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, okay.
Yes, that's right. And you guys are you guys still drafting by hand, and then the TD?
Well, I don't
digitizes,
draft
or-
by hand. I use AutoCAD.
Oh, great.
That doesn't stop the TDs from redrawing my drawings, however. But you know, that's natural because what I'm trying to do is, you know, create my idea. Mm-hmm. What they're trying to do is break my idea apart and find out how they're going to store it, how they're going to, you know, make it work with wheels and all of that sort of stuff. So I think it's a help that the document is already in AutoCAD, so they can just adjust it. But no, I haven't drafted with a pencil for a long time.
That's it's very comforting. Now, what about the other thing I'm curious about is there used to be a sort of a long tradition, I think, in the past, especially on larger, more lavish productions, of actually doing color renderings. Mm-hmm. Now it seems to be more focused on the model. Do people still do large color renderings of the different scenes, or is there sort of rough storyboarding and then it just becomes a model and TD drafting?
I think it depends on the show, and I think it depends on what your approach is going to be. If you're going to be very painterly and very graphic, I think doing an illustration does work. I mean, it gives you all the information, but you know, it's all about how do people read what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, an artistic rendering can only be considered an idea because there are no feet and inches on it necessarily. Even if the drawing's to scale, it could be misinterpreted or not interpreted at all. Mm-hmm. So a model is really still the best way to you know, give an example of what it is going to look like, you know, but even so, not all directors are able to even interpret a model, like interpret the space. Not everyone is spatial, you know, so it's, you know, I personally, I always start from a floor plan, and I spend a lot of time with the floor plan. Because with AutoCAD, I can do the floor plan, figure out how it sits, and then I can do my elevations, and then I can generate a paper model like in a day, you know? So I can work in paper model form, and I can make so many changes so quickly. So the AutoCAD to me is just a tool. It doesn't make me better. It doesn't have that impact, but it makes me get somewhere faster. You know, because I like to paint, I know what I'm giving up when I'm working in AutoCAD. So I can still apply my painting to it, but I just appreciate the technical specificity that AutoCAD gives me. You know, and if a show has seen changes in technologies and movement, and, you know, you have to flip the thing around, nothing's easier than doing that in AutoCAD. Right. You know, where if you're manually drafting, that can take you a long, long time. And then when you get inspiration after a day of drawing, that you go, oh, if I only had move this off center, you know, that where your soul dies a little bit when you've done it all in pencil. But in AutoCAD, it's no big deal. You can just go, okay, I'm going to spend another half hour and just convert all that, you know, over, and there it is. So, you know, it's a great tool, you know, but it's not necessary. Like, I don't think you have to do it. I need to do it now. I couldn't go back, but yeah.
Well, let's talk about the specific show that you're designing, at least one of them. Again, the Moss Hart. What's it called?
Light Up the Sky.
Light Up the Sky.
You know, it's not real famous. Like,
No.
it's not. I don't even know that I heard of it. I mean, I may have heard of it and it just didn't stick. Mm-hmm. But I've always loved Moss Hart. I mean, a giant in the sort of golden age of Broadway, right? And working with George Kaufman and all of that. And the play is really a love letter to the theater. I mean, if you've ever read his autobiography, Act One.
I was going to say, that's sort of a famous. Is this very similar, or is this based on that? Or?
It's not. Where it's similar is in spirit, and you know, the basic premise of the piece is that it's we're in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Boston in 1949, and it's a play that's trying out in Boston, and there are all these famous people in it. Not famous characters, but actually all the characters are based on actual famous people, which you can find out who they are. It's not important to know that to enjoy the show, but the level of their success and their fame and the risk that doing this play is for them, because they've they've hired this young playwright who's never written a play before. He's a truck driver, and he's written this beautiful play. And they've all risked, because they think it's so great, they've all risked their reputations and everything to come and work on this play. So Act 1 of the play is all about its opening night in the tryout in Boston, and they're all excited and full of congratulations to each other and nervous energy and, what this play might be and the love that they have for it. Then Act 2, of course, is right after the play has opened and the result of that opening performance and how they all turn on each other. Right. And then the last act has a resolve that I won't give away, but it takes us back to the joy of the beginning of the play. So if you're a theater lover who loves, who loves theater people and theater stories and backstage stories, this is a great one. It's very, very funny. I can't remember what your specific question was about.
No, that's exactly what I wanted to get into, was sort of the synopsis of the play, right, or the style of it. Tell me how you got. Is it? Are you doing it in period?
Yes.
Is it a sort of a traditional?
You kind of have to. You kind of have to. I mean, there's so much that's rich about it. We're doing it in period. Blair Williams is directing it, and it's lovely because we can. Theatrically, we've sort of decided to make the hotel another character. So it's an old-fashioned box set in terms of what the demands of the play are. We're only in one room, but our approach is to feel what is special about being in a hotel. And that's been fun to work on that. There's also which I didn't mention, there's also a group of Shriners that are having a convention in that hotel at the time of the play. So they create some shenanigans and we maximize that as well.
Delightful.
Yeah.
So where did you start with Blair to come up with you talked about the hotel as a character. Mm-hmm. How did you carry that forward? Does it change throughout the production? Like, does it change from scene 1 to scene 2? Scene 2?
No. We're what the play asks for is a room in a suite of rooms in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Mm-hmm. So it's the leading lady and her mother are sharing this suite of rooms, and all the action comes into the room, and we don't change the set. Right. But we do show you the hotel. We have Ben and Beth, who you mentioned earlier, are the video designers on this, and we do go on a bit of a journey outside the hotel and inside the hotel. So it's a lot of fun. This room keeps getting referenced back to, but we get there. So we have to get through the hotel to get there. So it's interesting. It's an interesting way into the piece, because the piece, these kind of big plays of this era, the curtain goes up and they have a sense of glamour and all of that. Yeah. But sometimes I feel there's a tendency that the air can go out of the room as soon as the curtain goes up, because the anticipation and expectation, while the audience loves what they see, it takes a while for them to hear what they want to hear, because and the actors have to get it started. And, sometimes there's a little bit of storytelling before the first joke. That's all I'm saying. So this kind of gives us a little bit of a bridge in, and it's working so far. So
that's delightful.
Yeah.
How do you find working under the structure of a large machine like this, where you have to make a lot of decisions really early, and then commit to them because it's built and all of a sudden painted before you get actors on stage?
Yeah.
Do you find that? Has that gotten old? I mean, obviously now you're used to it, right?
Yeah.
But is there what kind of other ways that you work to give yourself the maximum number of choices as late as you can, and how what techniques do you use to sort of make sure you've got like plan B?
Right. Well, you've hit the nail on the head about that's what working in rep is, because you've got so many shows in the season, and they all get produced one after the other and then put on a shelf, and then they go into rehearsal and they get brought off that shelf and get teched, and so yes, my deadlines for Light Up the Sky was before Christmas. And so you have to you have to troubleshoot as much as you can and think about every possibility as much as you can, and you can't be excessive. You have to, you can't build contingencies into your design that, well, I'll just do 5 more chairs, and if they don't need them, well, that's okay. No, you have to justify every penny you're spending. But I think being through this process so many times, I think I ask better questions when I'm working with the director. I try to find out where they want to go and where they really don't want to go. Because if I know where they really don't want to go, I can kind of put a little more contingency around where they want to go, or at least even if it's something that I don't express to anyone else, but it's in my choices of things, I go, well, it could be used this way or that way, or land on a color chart that allows me more flexibility when I have more information. Those are kind of personal to the artist ways of dealing with that. Knowing the spaces and knowing what can happen in them and where you can get stuck is a good thing to, you can arm yourself with that, but that only happens from making some mistakes.
That was going to be my next question. What are the kind of big mistakes that designers new to the rep situation and new to this venue make? Like, what's a common assumption that they make that's a pitfall for people who are coming into this process for the first time?
Well, that sounds like a good question, but in a way, it's a bit cookie cutter of a question because our 3 spaces are so different, or 4 spaces actually are so different. And no 2 designers are alike in terms of what their experience has been up to coming to Shaw. Like, we have a great big main stage. Not a lot of theaters have that. It's a big presentation space. So designers who've never worked on that, we don't bring young designers in to do their first show there. Yeah. We bring them in and they are in other spaces and then they move there. Right. So by the time they're on that main stage, they're not making those kinds of mistakes. They have some experience. Hopefully they're doing something interesting and trying new things, but they have an awareness of what that machine is. The courthouse space, being a thrust stage, is very intimate, but it's a very difficult space to work in because there's no storage or very little storage, and the storage that there is, you're sharing with 2 other shows or 3 other shows, so that makes your portion very small. There's no wing space, all of that. So you have to be very creative, and usually the more challenging shows in the mandate end up in the courthouse. So you're right away you're required to be clever, but that the courthouse relates a little bit more to what a lot of young designers who might be working in Toronto might have to be dealing with. Right. So they have some expertise to bring to that. So it's you're kind of positioning them to succeed if you give them that space first. Mm-hmm. The same with the Royal George. The Royal George is our sweet spot, though. That is the easiest space to work in. The sight lines of the audience are so perfect with the opening of the proscenium. And it's a really unique stage. Despite how tiny it is, you can create an illusion of grandeur that you can take a picture of something at the Royal George and you don't know what theater that's in. You could believe that was on the main stage because you can play with the height. And there's just so many tricks that you can do in that space that is a lot of fun. So that's really my favorite space because it's not that I don't love the main stage or the courthouse, but the George it feels like you're playing a really good instrument in there. You're not challenged by it. It's helping you, at every turn. So I really enjoy that space.
That's terrific. I spoke to Christine this morning and we talked about the Chocolate Soldier.
Oh yes,
which was one of the first shows I did here, and that was exactly the thing. It looked like a giant set, but when you get on stage, you only have 25 feet to the back wall or something, right?
Yeah.
So
to the pillar.
To the pillar. That's right. To the pillar.
The pillar.
Grand pillar. I know. Try to fit like 400 lights above that is difficult. So let's just transition. The last thing I want to talk about is the assistant designer, or the apprenticeship program, or whatever you want to call it, that you manage and administer here. How do you approach hiring people into that position? Where are they usually found in their careers? And what's your philosophy about what you expect them to learn and to be able to do once they arrive here?
Well, that is a good question, Michael, compared to the other one that I said wasn't good as I was judging your questions. Okay. Young designers, you used to want them to have a certain skill set, and they used to be, somewhere like Stratford or Shaw were the only places for young designers to go back then. But now it's not that way. They can have film careers, they can have television careers, and the kind of skills you need for film and television are not exactly the same as the theater. Although I always say if you have theater skills, it's easy to go into film and television. If you don't have them, the road back is not easy. So there isn't the same kind of drive from a theater program into these bigger organizations. There's still a migration, but it's not the only way you can get in. So I don't have, from year to year, I don't have the same number of applications all the time. And you really want a student to be a good fit in that they are interested in learning the kind of work that we do. If you want to, if you're getting an applicant who wants to be doing different kinds of work that we don't do on our stages, it's not gonna be a good fit. Even though there's lots for them to learn, and even though what there is to learn here will serve them well everywhere, it has to be the passion has to be there as much as it has to be for the designer to be an assistant here. Because you're not being able to express yourself, you're contributing to other people's ideas. And you have to do it willingly and generously and the best that you can, and then you have to be willing to do it again if you didn't do it well enough. So you need those character traits to come here. And what is true about theater is it's still here for those that want it. Any position that one is offered when they're young, there's the formality of the position and there's what they take from it. They can take twice as much as is offered if they are interested and motivated. So that is still here. I think it's important for young people to still have drawing skills, even though technology is there. I think you have to be able to just pick up a pencil and show somebody what you mean. And if you can't do that, a lot of designers aren't as articulate as actors might be, or as people that are playing with words all the time. But you have to be articulate with your pencil in whatever way that is. And if you can't be articulate with your pencil, you better be really articulate with your keyboard and your mouse. That being said, we do want all those computer technologies, AutoCAD if you have it, definitely Photoshop, because that's what we're doing all the time. Those are the tools of the day. We're still using watercolors, but we're also using the computer. So you have to be familiar with all of that. And, you have to have a love for the theater. You have to love reading scripts. If you don't love reading a script, what are you doing working in the theater? Because it's all there. It's there to be enjoyed. It's there to be wondered at. It's there to be inspired by. So you have to be happy reading things. So that's important. And, you have to be curious. If you're not curious, again, why are you in the theater? Because if you don't have that element, what are you going to bring to this that's new or fresh or interesting?
Oh my God,
it's a job offer.
We're an hour in. Sorry, we're an hour in. I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's all right.
Those are all terrific things. The one final question, and this is sort of on the same kind of theme. If someone wants to go into theater, let's say the theater design in general, what do you think? First of all, do you think it's a good idea, given the current climate? Because I spoke to a couple of people I've spoken to in recording the title block have been kind of negative and saying, look, this is not the time to get into theater. You go into something, go into make YouTube videos or find some other kind of way to express yourself. But is that a valid opinion, or do you think that the opportunities exist and people can make it if they try hard enough? What do you think? If someone says I want to go into theater, what would you tell them?
Well, I think what's true has always been true and is still true, that you have to go where your heart leads you. Where your if you are interested in exactly the kind of work that the Shaw Festival does, you don't want to go into film because you're only going to get one, maybe 4 of those in a whole career, working on a period film. So if period work is really what you want to do, Stratford and Shaw are the place to go. And find out what skills are required and invent yourself to be the person that should be working there. There's so many more choices now than there were when Christina and I graduated from NTS, And if I was graduating now, I don't know that I would necessarily take the same trajectory. Although I don't regret any of the choices I made, because those were all driven by my interests. We're all different, and if you have an opportunity to embrace technology and be exposed to technology, I would take it. I mean, time does not stand still, and development does not stand still. So you have to be living in the time that you're in, right? So I think it's not while I kind of have empathy for the people that say, I don't know if it's such a good idea to get into theater. I understand exactly what they mean. You're never going to make a lot of money, I'm not to say that you can't find a way to make a lot of money in a theater career, but that's a very different approach to the work and a very different effort that you're putting in. But I just don't think the expectation that you can make a good living and everything will be fine. I don't think there's the stability that there used to be. So become diverse and cross as many different disciplines as you can. And if I was me starting out now, I would hope I'd spend more time thinking about becoming a director or doing those sorts of things, because those barriers are not there anymore that were when I was in theater school. You had to you were fast-tracked in certain areas. So designers got this kind of training, actors got this kind of training. But I think we lost something with that. I think there's room for a lot more kinds of directors than stage managers who become directors or actors who become directors. Well, all that's valid and important, and it makes for a very strong theater community. I think the visual director is also very important. And I think young people should be thinking about that too.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Bill. This has been terrific. Thanks a lot. And that was designer William Schmuck speaking to me from his office at the Shaw Festival in May 2015. Next time, props designer Fina McDonald will join me. The music for this podcast is by Vern Good with voiceover by Gabriel Cropley. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. It will help get the word out about this podcast and share the history of theater design in Canada. And you can follow us on Twitter at TheTitleBlockCA and on Facebook.com/The Title Block Podcast. You can send comments and requests by email to thetitleBlock@gmail.com. And don't forget that if you like the show, please support us on Patreon.com. And feel free to share this with your friends, colleagues, students, and teachers, or listen to it while you wonder how your assistant ever glued those little knickknacks on the shelf on the model, because now that you're 40, you just can't get your fingers in there. There. I've gone and dropped it in the glue. Ugh. I'm Michael Cruz, and I'll see you next time on The Title Block.